Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the League of Inches podcast. Joel and Trav here with you. Another season review coming at you. This one for the Melbourne Storm. So obviously everyone knows by now Trav is a Melbourne Storm supporter. So it's going to be great to get his thoughts about the season as well. We're going to talk about obviously a year of huge success, and then obviously fell at that final hurdle, which I know still stings a lot of Storm fans out there, but it's all part of what we will discuss in this episode. So as we always sort of do, so for the Storm, they finished top of the ladder when it came to the regular season. 19 wins, 5 losses, and plus 243 points differential. So a really, really successful season, especially when you throw into the mix some of those sort of injuries I had there with like Cam Munster, who was out for a long period of time, and to be able to be that consistent over the season. For mine, they were clearly the best team when it came to regular season football, and then we can obviously talk about what happened there come the finals. But Trav, it's your team. I'll let you take it away. Your thoughts around, I guess, the season as a whole and what you thought and how you thought of the season.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. First and foremost, after the big storm last night, but yeah, love it. I'm really proud of the boys, mate. I thought we had a really good year. We were the best team all year. I think it was, whilst as a fan of the team, it was quite frustrating the way that we started, that slow and steady approach, just sort of ease in, win where you got to, build your momentum, build your team play, manage your injuries, manage Origin for us. It was a really slow and steady approach, but, at most of the time we were actually in the top. We were the best team based off results. There were moments in time of the season where I think the way that we played in our game style, we were far from the top, but we still managed to win, which meant our record was there. But it was just a big building momentum this year. It was different to the way that we've played in the past. The best team all year, the only thing that could stop us is the best team that's probably we've ever seen in the NRL in a grand final. So, and you can't be disappointed. You can be hurt, but I don't think you can be disappointed by that. Inevitably we're all going for the grand final, but when you're the best team all year and everyone spoke that way and you get beaten by the best team that's probably ever played, in a dynasty that they are, I don't think it's disappointing. I will talk a little bit about some of those stats you were talking about. I'd just like to talk about the consistency that we have, and then I know we'll talk about it more as we go through the pod. But, as you said, 19 wins, 5 losses, a differential of 243. We had points for 692, points against 449. Just based off numbers, that doesn't really mesh. But if you think about what we did in 2023, we were 16-8 and finished third. We had 627 points for, and against we had 459. So how's that for consistency with the amount of changes that we had to manage this year? Like, we had a massive injury in Munster to sit out for a long period of time. We have to deal with the bulk amount of dudes playing Origin and sitting in other duties. We've had, not only did we do that, we had Blore coming in. We had, our centers were a revolving door of players, and we had the next man up mentality, which we'll talk about. Howarth coming through as the center. I just think that's just ridiculous to think about those numbers. And I've got some more defensive and attacking numbers that we can do. I'll pull through as we go. But I just wanted to give that a quick shout out.
Yeah, no, and it sort of, it paints a picture, I guess, of the year and just how successful it was. And I guess the huge credit for mine is the first talk we can really get to is Craig Bellamy and just how he steers this ship. And he's done it for so long now. And we've seen coaches, like we can talk about, like obviously Parramatta, for instance, Brad Arthur's era is over after being there for so long, and sort of it fizzled out in a way where for the Storm, which has never happened. It just continues to evolve and get better. And that's the scary thing. You continue to talk about the fact, like, you lose all those big three a couple of years ago, and that's finally the era of the Storm sort of over. We can start breathing as opposition fans, and maybe experience a couple of seasons where Storm are battling to make the 8 and things like that. And it just doesn't happen. And that's a huge credit to the Melbourne Storm club, the outfit, but also the man in charge of that, which is Craig Bellamy. And you look at the sort of the start of the season, and there's a few sort of losses in there, but after like round 12 or so, I think it was three losses in there. There was 7 or so wins, and there was a bye as well. Like there was a couple of sort of things that was happening there. So it was a weird, just the way that consistently throughout the whole year, he made sure you guys were in the top 4, first of all, making sure if there was some injuries and things like that, you always had the runs on the board to be able to stay, either stick ahead and then fall back into the pack if that's what happened, or just continue the rise, which is what happened. And the funny thing there is we talk about the Cam Munster injury, which is a huge part of the season, I feel like, because many teams out there, if they lose that caliber of player, they'd probably go downhill, and that they probably start losing all their games, that they won't make the top 8, that you can rub them out straight away. Enter Tyron Wishart, who I thought was absolutely phenomenal this year in that 5'8" position. And he's sort of it's a weird one now, because you've seen now and had a glimpse of life without the Munster era, I guess, in a way. And again, for a fan, it's pretty scary because there's other players in there that can fill that void. And then we've seen Munster come back, and I think he had a really good back end of that the year when he did get to play and played some really good roles when required. But what were your thoughts around that? Because obviously Munster, a huge blow. You don't want to lose him for the amount of time that you did get to, but it allowed us to look at some of these other players and also just see how much the Storm have evolved as a club.
It's tough to lose the best 5'8" in the competition, isn't it? And then especially the way we play, because we play so much through our spine, and that's literally how everything works for us. And it's because we've had to this year with the inconsistencies through our forward pack in terms of meters and what we've had to do. And we've been known at the Storm for a long time. Obviously, we've had Munster, Cronk, Slater, Smith, and they were just on their own backs were able to do it. But it was very handy that we had all such our big meter eaters really dominating for them, so that they could be like that. And we haven't had that the last couple of years. And so it's when Munster went down, it was like, oh crap, like what do we do? And as I said before, and as Penrith do so well as well, and I think it's obviously a Bellamy thing, is it's not your starting 17, it's not your top 20, it's your entire list and your development of your entire list and your building of your entire list. It's one, you're only as good as your last list player. Like that's fully the mentality that I think Bellamy has had for a very long time, and Penrith have now as well, and have developed over the last dynasty years. And and so it's amazing. Like I love Wishart. I've loved him for a couple of years now, and he showed what he had, but I didn't think he had what he had and what he showed this year. I didn't think he had that. And to be completely honest, I think Wishart's a gun. Do I think Wishart's a number one playmaker on a team? No, I don't. I don't think when he's the sole man. But bloody hell, he played this year to deserve a pay packet. So, it will end up losing him probably, because that's what he's done. But I don't think he's going to be like that. So it was a tough thing. But shit, we still finished first, didn't we? And with that mentality, and there's a whole heap of injuries to go through. I'll touch on really quickly, 30 seconds, on a point that you made before about, losing the Immortals and Hall of Famers. Like we've lost in recent times, we've lost Slater, Cronk, Smith. There's 3, right? Then think about the Bromwich boys, Kafusi, who's the other one? Will, the other centre we had that played Origin and for us. Will Chambers, Addo Carr. Like we've lost these studs, like these guys who were at times the number one player in those positions, or could have been argued for it. And we've lost all of them. And yet now we're talking at the end of 2024, and we've again got the number one spine in the competition. We've built our forward pack around replacements for those boys. We've got Katoa as a monster. Bloor is becoming a monster. Howarth is becoming an elite centre. Like it's nice to see. And It's good. And as a spectacle for fans, I think people should be excited about it. Pissed off because, again, we're talking about how good the Storm are, and we do that every year. But yeah, I just think it's exciting.
I guess what the there is hopefully in terms of the way the club's built and they've got that new aura about them with all these key star players in and around it. It's a really exciting time to be part of that team and to be a fan and to watch what happens now moving forward, because those foundations, once again, the Storm, and when they've been at their best, it's when they've had those very good 1, 6, 7, and 9s, and they've got that again. So it's a very, very exciting time. And we know what Craig Bellamy's coaching style is like. As long as he has those 4 sort of positions down pat, he'll make the rest of the team work around that. And we've seen that again this year. And it's sort of a good way to go into some of these players. And the first one, and we've sort of spoken about all the spine apart from this player so far, but Jerome Hughes, absolutely huge year. He was absolutely sensational. Rightly deserved the Dally M. Was a awesome individual year as well as a team player. He got sort of thrown into it. Once Munster, it's sort of in a way, it's always been Munster's team whenever it's been these two as a pairing, where this year it's become Jerome Hughes' team. And he got help with that because of the injury, and it sort of forced the Storm's hand. But I think in a way it's helped Jerome Hughes' game out immensely and evolved and shown this style of his game that I don't think a lot of us realized he had, that sort of game management, being able to not do, we've always known he's been probably the best running half in the game for a while now, because he's got that natural ability from being a fullback in his lower grades. But now being that sort of main organising player, he's just almost a complete player. And obviously there's someone called Nathan Cleary out there, so you can't give him the best playmaker in the comp tag, but he's right up there. His improvement is immense, and it's sort of it's a huge sign of what, and he's a prime example of the Melbourne Storm and a Craig Bellamy sort of style of player. How Craig got him, knew sort of he had about, I think at the time where he decided to put him into the halves, he had 3 or 4 decent young fullbacks coming through and made a decision there. And Hughes has just evolved. So Trav, like the season he's had this year was one of the best seasons we've probably seen, most consistent seasons we've seen for a long time.
That's a big call. There's been some really good years. I think, like, it's hard to, and I feel like we're downplaying how good his year was in terms of by saying, there's a Cleary out there and he's the best playmaker. Like, Hughes was the best playmaker. He was the best player this year. And only because Cleary got injured, maybe, but you've got to call it as it is and what it is. Is Hughes the best player in the competition? No, Cleary is clearly the best player in the competition. But for 2024, Hughes was by far and above the best player. Tedesco was very close in the votes, but let's be honest, it was only because Hughes got rested and got votes taken away from him for a freaking a suspension that was absolute rubbish. But so it was close because of that. But yeah, like, his year was just immense. Bellamy spoke about it heaps in the lead up to the grand final. He spoke about it at the Dally M. Like, the thing that took Hughes to his next level this year was what he had to take on himself about being a leader, and which then set him up into, I had to be a playmaker. I had to take games in under my belt when I needed to. I had to put the team on my shoulders because I had no choice. And that was what took him. He's always had the skill. He's been a top halfback for 3-4 years. This year, he just took it to a whole nother level because he had to, with the leadership ability. And it's amazing when you find those people who have that leadership in them, just that extra cog that they seem to find. And it's an immortal Hall of Famer type skill that people just don't have, that takes players from superstardom to greatness, and that's a big thing to say. Hughes has done it for 1 year, and he's obviously got to do it for the next few years. But as you said, the year that he had was immense, and we can't understate that. And he had to, and yeah, I'm keen to see what he does next year. Like, and I said to you in a couple of the reviews, that we've had as we led through the finals period, like, the best thing about the spine and the best thing about Hughes and the skill that Hughes has got, which separates him from every other halfback other than Cleary is when Hughes has to do something, he will do it. If he doesn't, he just makes sure he gets the ball to the player who needs to do it, or he's doing it, or and that's an amazing knack to have and a skill to have, that discipline.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's sort of, I don't know if it's presented a little bit of a drama or anything. Like we talk about Munster, we talk about the injury and how he recovered. He's obviously had the surgery and stuff, and see what happens into next year. We've seen Wishart, how he plays. Do you think there's any concerns there around what happens moving forward with this combination of Munster and Hughes? Is it they'll both just be there? Is it time to maybe look at perhaps Munster's career and see where he's at and compare that with some of the youngster guys? You got Pezzett coming through as well, who sort of taking a backward seat now of the rise of Wishart, but let's not forget how big the raps are on Pezzett as well. So do you, it's a weird one because as you said, Munster's at his best, he's the best 5'8" in the game. There's no doubt about it, but there's also the salary cap era. We've got to balance all that. There's only so much money, I guess, you can put into that sort of big spine 4 sort of category. It's a different one, but it's also something that I guess Bellamy would be thinking about, unfortunately. Like, yep, let's have a great year this next year as well. Let's build onto this. But I've also got to balance that salary cap, and there might be decisions to make, whether it's Pappy as well. There's rumors are floating around about Pappy, what he wants to do. Apparently there's a low ball offer there from the Storm of around the 750 mark. Whether people agree with that's low ball or not, because of obviously this injuries that he's had, I think it's a very respectful offer, to be honest with you. And I think clubs out there who are offering any more than that got to be tread very carefully with, unfortunately, his injury history and just what is the likely outcome of him and how many games he'll play each year. Where are your quick thoughts around the spine at the moment? Because obviously, we'll celebrate how good they were this year, but there's also that little linger in the background about what is going to happen next.
I think the other thing to consider about this is, Hughes is 30 and Munster's 30. So they've still got, in my opinion, 30 for those positions are prime time. So they've still got 3 to 4 years of being studs in those roles. And if we have a look through the entire competition, like name me 5 better younger players than those guys. Like, it's very hard. There isn't, and you're probably not going. And the point of saying younger is that for the next 3 to 4 years, Munster and Hughes, bar injury, are going to keep doing what they're doing. So, yeah, at the point of saying, and so the other side of that is there any other young guys coming through? Yeah, Pezzett, we've got Pezzett, but you've got to make sacrifices. Like we've had to do this. Penrith have bloody been doing it for freaking 4 years. You have to make sacrifices because you can't pay everybody, and you can't do it. And players seem to come to us and other teams, particularly us, and become guns and go off and aren't that good moving forward. So, like the history, it pronounces itself really clearly with that. So, it's a sacrifice for these guys to go, this is what I did at the Storm. We were winning and we were doing this. You know what? I deserve to be paid. But if I go, in the back of my mind am I an organization player? Like, is it the system that's made me a better player or not? Like, have a look at Nico Hines. He won a Dally M the year after he came through after he left us, but we couldn't afford him. We simply couldn't. We wanted Pappenhausen at fullback and we didn't need him in the other spot. So yeah, I don't have problems with that. I'm not scared about it. To me, it's the next mentality. It's the next man up. If Pezzett's smart, he'll sit there and develop for the next 2 to 3 years behind Munster and go, yep, when I'm 24, 25 and I'm in my prime, I've just learned how to do this. It's my turn. That's what he's got to think about. Pappenhausen's a whole different story. We paid him $1.1 million for a very long time now. He's about to get it again next year. And then he leaves us potentially leaves us in 2026. I think the years are right. I'm not sure if that's right, but
that's right.
But he hasn't played. So, there's this element of, does he owe the club anything? No, I don't believe it. I don't believe he owes the Storm anything. But I also need to think that he's got to be, a bit of, I don't know, morality, maybe some ethics around, maybe I do take a little bit of a cut here for the next few years. I stay, I see how it goes. I stay till Bellamy's, going to probably look at retiring, although we talk about that most years.
Every year.
Yeah. Like at least he's signed till the end of 2026, right? So he's not going to do that for the next 2 years, for the next 18 months. But, is there a bit of morality around that? So showing some morals around, look, I've been paid a lot. I haven't played. I love the Storm, off I go. But I don't hold it to him that if he wants to take them, if someone wants to pay him 1.1, you're taking him at a big risk. But, he's a star. Like when he's on, he's on. So, I don't buy into a lot of that stuff. I don't get disappointed by it. Like it is what it is. That's part of franchise sport and salary cap sport across any board. We've got someone like Sewer sitting in the wings, which I don't think he's anywhere near as good as Pappenhausen, but he has the potential to be. And he's got a bit more of that Showtime flair that's quite nice to have. So, yeah, I'm not buying into it. I'm not worried about it.
And that's probably the bonus there in that situation is, and there's not many teams out there that have that sort of quality in depth and a backup ready to literally walk straight into that lineup. Is that Sewer is there. He is, for mine, an out-and-out fullback and probably going to be a star of the game in years to come. So it's a handy position to be in. Back to sort of this year, there's a couple of players I want to talk about that sort of, look, obviously like Eli Katoa, for instance, sensational year. We know how good he was. And I think we've spoken about him a lot on this page already in a number of sort of shows so far. I don't want to bore people. What I want to go with is talk about a couple of younger players who I think were great this year and built into the season perfectly. And it was so Craig Bellamy. Yes, when we talk about Bellamy and his effect on this team, it was so Bellamy-like it wasn't funny. So obviously the signing of Sean Bloor, and he came over from the Tigers, and I think everyone in the game has sort of felt like, yep, he's had a bit of talent and he's got something about him, but just wasn't able to make it work. And then when that swap happened with Olam, most people were thinking the Storm were getting the better end of the deal, but they just weren't 100% sure on it yet because whether it's injury, suspension, or just his head wasn't there at the Tigers, we never really got to see the best of Sean Bloor. But everyone knew that Bellamy would be able to get, if there is anything out of him, get it out of him. And he started slow. I think he started in reserve grade a couple of weeks to get really match fit and to know, and basically a sign from the Storm to say, you're not walking into this team. You earn being in a Melbourne Storm jersey, which we know and we love from this organisation how they work. And then Jack Howarth is another one, in my opinion, who he was absolutely sensational at the back end of the year. Probably a top 5 centre he finished in this season. And again, Bellamy has had this guy, and I guess for Supercoach players out there, we've always known about him for about 3 or 4 years now and continue to buy him thinking he's going to get his chance and that sort of thing. He was an edge back rower in the lead up to this season, and then he got the chance to play and be a centre, and he's absolutely starting it. But again, that slow build, that slow rise, don't rush him. Avoid the outside noise of pressure saying, oh, we need to see what Jack Howard's got. Bellamy stuck with his guns, and both have ended up having starring roles this year for the Storm. Very underrated roles, but as I said, very, very starring roles when you compare them to the likes of these superstars that the Storm have.
Yeah, I love your shout out for Bloor. Like everyone knew that he had potential and had talent. He just couldn't. He just had to have someone to kick him in the ass and beat it out of him, basically, and that's what Bellamy had to do. And how good was he? And particularly early in those first few games, like he played 24 games this year. But really early, his relationship with Munster was really nice. Like, and to think about this, we're going to have this for the next few years. Munster, Bloor one side, Hughes, Katoa on the other side. Like that's mouthwatering. But again, like Bloor's another one of those guys. Like, had potential, didn't live up to it, needed to, he had to get swapped. It was a player swap. Like it's a bit of a kick to your ego, I reckon. To be able to, you had a player swap, you haven't lived up to it. We're a bit pissed off with you, so let's get rid of you and see what else we can get for you. Like that should be a kick in the guts, and I feel like it was. And he was a monster, and I thought he was great. I wouldn't say, sorry, I said monster. I wouldn't say he was a monster. I thought he was great this year, but there's a lot more potential and consistency that he needs to build. There were moments in time where he disappeared for games, where he was still locked down on defense and protected where he needed to be, but just attacking wise, he sort of lost that, particularly when Wishart came in, because Wishart is much more a running player than Munster, and which is funny to say because we all love how Munster runs and what he does with his fens off and things. But yeah, he's a more running player, so I think he just sort of lost his way a bit there. And the touch on Howarth, this is a big call. I'm going to call it, but I'm going to say this, and I'm not saying this as a Storm supporter, but Howarth's elite. He's an elite centre. The way he played the rest over this year and what he's got now, and he didn't train in preseason in centre. I can tell you that right now. I went down and watched a few of the games when I was on holidays and stuff, and I can guarantee he was not training or even near the centres. Yet he's come in as a centre when we needed to because we had injuries, and has become an elite centre in my opinion. And what I think is the best thing about it, and I said this a couple of times during the year, which you asked me not to, but I did anyways, was one of the things that was really worrisome about the Storm was that edge, the Warbrick defensive edge, and what was that? And Howarth just completely locked that down and unlocked the Warbrick potential, which segues into the next young player, which I hope you were going to have on your list, is Warbrick, and how bloody good he was this year. But only because I think Howarth turned up and just unlocked his potential. Warbrick became a much better defensive player. And Warbrick had to learn that. He's coming from the rugby sevens and union and his background in that. But he's had a few years in the system to learn that, and you think Bellamy would teach him that pretty quickly. And it's just amazing how good he did and what he played when Howarth came through it. It's funny to say for such a young fella, but Howarth made people around him play better, and that was amazing to see this year. And I've got so much admiration for what he did, and I can't wait to see what he does next year with a preseason under his belt at centre.
I'm glad you did mention the Warbrick one. He was sensational this year. Again, another one that for mine has shot up to real big sort of top 5 sort of wingers in the game. And that's a huge credit to him, because you talk about the rugby sevens back, and there's a bloody good footballer in Warbrick. And I think we all seen that from very early on. If you're playing the sevens game, you can clearly play footy. You're a footy player. It's just plain and simple. That's what you are. And he's fit. He's had all that. But again, the big bold writing there and the big exclamation marks is how the Melbourne Storm bring these players through. And people bag the Storm all they want, and they can live in the past. I wish as a Para fan I could do the same, but it gets to a point in time where you just got to admire the club and how they are actually coming through with the goods when it comes to this sort of things, and how well they do this sort of stuff. Because again, there was no rush with Will Warbrick. It felt like, and you look back now at some of these players, they're never rushing these players. There's always plans in place, and it's a very steady sort of plan of attack where it's over a 2, 3, 4 year sort of lifespan, and they get it done. It's like every year there's little things that they'll add to these players' games and make them evolve into all of a sudden, like we've seen now, Will Warbrick I think this is his 3rd year in the game. He's basically now become that elite sort of winger. And probably 12 months ago, people thinking, it hasn't really worked here. I don't know what he's going to eventuate to. He's okay, but he's not like one of those special wingers, where now at the end of 2024, we're thinking, whoa, you're making sure you keep Will Warbrick. He's a good player. And that's the question marks I always have around a lot of these clubs out there. Let's use sort of the Lockie Miller one, for instance. He went and played with the Sharkies off that sevens background, and then got moved on to the Knights, then over to the Super League. There was a good footballer in Lockie Miller. I just don't think he was used right, and there wasn't that that calmness and that actual plan of attack into having those little moments where if he went down to the Storm, I got no doubt in my mind he would have become one of those really good players as well in the game. So great shout out to the Will Warbrick, and I think the big brick will be, again, a star next year, and I'm really keen to see what he's got and potentially lifting that trophy up at the end of next year. I've got one problem for you when I look at this Melbourne Storm team and the season as a whole. It's Nelson Solomona. I just feel like he's becoming a bit of a problem here with this team. And It's one where the modern game and how it is adapting. First of all, do you need that big man, that big alpha male? I'm not too sure, but that's not the reason I think he's a problem. He's a problem because he just can't control himself. And again, we've seen it at the end of this year where we'll never know if this happened or not, but if he played in the grand final, the Storm have a much better chance of winning the game, in my opinion. He didn't play. He got suspended, and the rest is history. We've seen Penrith now lift up the trophy for the 4th year in a row, but there just seems to be something a little bit off with this relationship. If I'm looking at it from an outsider's point of view, it just seems like he's always got that sort of rumors about union a part of him. He's just sort of got that character where he sort of doesn't really care in a way. Like, I don't know. But then it gets to sort of the back end of the year and he started to turn on a bit. Like, we started to see this really good footballer again that we all know Nelson can be. And we're like, oh, here we go. But then again, loses his marbles and at a really huge point of the season. As a fan first, Trav, like your thoughts around Nelson and sort of where he's fitting in at the moment, and is it a problem? Like, where are we at with this Nelson dilemma? I guess it is.
I'll start with this. The media needs something to try and have a go at, and the negative world that we live in, and Nas is a very easy target to have a go at. So constantly Nas is in the story because they need something to have a go at Melbourne Storm or something to talk about or to try and create stories. And that's what media does, right? He's just an easy target for it. So, yeah, as a fan and as a Storm supporter, we know what Nas is like and what he does. I think the media play so much around what he does. I think one thing that Melbourne does really well, if Bellamy does it, is a lot of stuff is in-house, you know, and that's probably what pisses media off. It's what pisses blokes like you off who are creating pages and content, because we keep so many things in-house and have that moral and ethical view of what we do is stays inside, and how we negotiate and what we have with that is stays in our club. And so therefore Nas needs to be a story, right? I think Nas got shafted. I think Nas is an easy shaft for suspensions. I still disagree with the way it was handled and what happened. But again, the New South Wales media needed to call something and needed to turn it up, because New South Wales have got to win premierships over Melbourne. There's your big call. You can put that where you want. So yeah, that's to answer that. The second part is, as a fan, as a Storm fan, and I've said this a few times throughout the year, and we can go back to some of the reviews that we've had and what we've talked about, is that, you know, at times the problem with Nas is that he is a liability and that liability is a big impact on us. I don't think moving forward his liability is going to be as bad. I think we have the Stefano signing. I think is a big deal. I think Josh King has become a really good player. I think Liero is. I mean, he just made an Origin camp. I think Liero is getting better and better and better. I think we've got some good young players coming through for our full pack. So I don't think it's as big a liability moving forward. So I'm not concerned by him at all. The only thing that is concerning is that when he does something, it becomes a news story. Storm become another thing that gets in the media. It becomes a bit of a distraction at times. But yeah, I'm not too fussed by it.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how this happens, because, like, I understand what you're saying, but I think the end of the day is he continues to put himself into these situations where he gets a suspension and things like that as well. Whether he's being unfairly treated, I'm not too sure. Like, there's probably Roosters fans sitting here at the moment listening going, well, that's been Jared Rea-Hargraves' career as well. Like, this is what happens, I guess, with the big man and sort of what they're doing. So it just feels like, in a way, and people maybe listen to the podcast so far about our weekly update, the game is getting a lot more serious when it comes to protecting players' heads and stuff like that. And unfortunately, some of these big men, it is a lot harder for them to get down and get lower and get to these sorts of areas that the game is wanting him to get to. That's the only sort of concern, I guess, for mine when it comes to Nelson, and just where he sits with I guess, this not just the Storm, but the game in general. Because either if the Storm say, all right, it's getting too hard, let's cut you, is there many NRL teams that would flock to get him, knowing like they're going to have to deal with the same issues? It's an odd one. It's a different one, but again, as you said, there's a really good forward pack in there next year. I think he'll be used off the bench and become a really good bench impact player, and we'll obviously discuss that in our season reviews for season previews for 2025. We've spoken about how good the year has been, and there's no doubt in my mind it's been a remarkable year for the Melbourne Storm. If you just looked at it on paper, looked at the results, looked at the stats, looked at everything, and ignored who won the competition, you'd say A plus, incredible year, well done. But unfortunately, the last part of this is the sour taste that it's left in the mouths of a lot of Melbourne Storm fans, and the fact that they weren't able to win the premiership, and that's obviously the huge goal. I feel like personally, and it's a discussion that we'll probably have on the page at some point in the off season, minor premiers should be rewarded a lot more than they currently are and celebrated a lot more, because you've just, in my opinion, that's a harder comp to win. You've just played 27 odd weeks of a competition and you've managed to win that comp. You should be rewarded a hell of a lot more than you are for a 4-week competition that, as we've seen, Penrith, look, they're injured stars. They get a little bit of a rest. They come back perfectly timed, energized, and that's good management from them. There's no doubting that. I'm not going to have a go at them for that. But there just needs to be a bit more of a reward for winning that 27-week competition like the Storm have done. But again, you didn't get the big trophy. You didn't get the rings. That sour taste, Trav, it burns a lot of teams. And if we've seen in recent years, it hasn't burnt in the right way, and they've actually gone backwards, most teams. What about yourself? Where's that sour taste sitting when it comes to that loss? And I guess it's the sort of being the very last moment of the year makes you go, oh, look, the year was great, but there's a but.
Yeah, there is a but, isn't there? But that but only happened because of the best team that's probably ever played before, like in a dynasty series. So, whilst it is sour and I've got a sour taste and I'm disappointed, bitterly disappointed, you want your team to win. And I'm also a really big believer of, in any sport, I always hope that the best team all year, as much as I hate them, or if I do hate that team, wins the comp because they deserve it. And that doesn't always happen. More often than not, but commonly that does happen, where the best team doesn't win the competition. In a lot of sports, that's just the way it works, because in finals contests are a different game. It's a different kettle of beast. I agree totally, and I agree totally in all sports that when you've got a minor premier like this in a competition where everyone's one division, or one conference, or however you want to say it, or one competition, should be heavily rewarded. NRL is even more so, because the things that you have to navigate throughout the competition, throughout every single year, is immense. Go through other competitions. Like in the NBA at the moment, they've just added this in-season tournament, but there's still 5-6 games of their normal 82 that they're going to play. It's not an add-on. They get a break for All-Star weekend. So they sit off for a week and go and play All-Star game. Like they've, but for in the NRL, they have 3 Origin games, and that affects each one of them for 2 weeks and each club for 2 weeks. And they try to give buys and manage that. They play 27 games too, or 27 rounds. They play however many games they play, because I think it's 25 with 2 buys or 3, whatever. But it's, the year in NRL, I think, needs to be heavily rewarded, and they need to figure out a way to do that in terms of, we can talk about money. Monetary value is a big thing. More home games the year after. Like, you've got to put something out there that rewards the team that wins, because it's freaking hard to win and consistently do it. And that's the other thing that I think people understate about who wins first, or who gets first, is you've done it all year. You're consistent. Yeah. You've lost in and out of the year, and you've had to deal with injuries, but you've been consistent enough to win enough games to get to first spot. That should be bloody rewarded. Maybe you look in a draft pick, you get the first pick. And I understand the reverse order of draft picks and stuff like that, but yeah, there's got to be something that rewards it, that does it, because that is a big deal. But yeah, at the end of the day, you get a cup, and that's what gets put on show. That's what people talk about. We don't talk about anything else. And as of next year, in the next couple of weeks, we won't talk about this other than Cleary and the Penrith Panthers winning.
And look, if you're listening and you got some ideas, please message the page, because as I said, we'll probably do a bit of a special around this in the while there's a bit of quiet time over the next couple of months, but just sort of some ways to spice it up and to make those minor premierships. Is it worth more? Should there be more? Let us know some of your ideas, and you'll feature on the page. I'll put a post out, things like that as well. Just finally, where did it go wrong in the grand final? I know it was a little bit of time now, but whatever you can remember of the grand, and you've probably not wanted to watch it much and think about it much, but what was it that went wrong on that night?
I haven't watched it again. I probably won't, because I actually didn't really enjoy the game, even as a fan. I thought it was, defensively, it was an interesting game to watch. But yeah, I thought for a grand final that had so much hype, it was quite boring. Where did it go wrong? We got shafted by the judiciary before the week started. I honestly think that I think something can be considered with the Dally M and what happens with that. I think the timing of that and how that manages, I think, needs to be considered, because I think that can be a distraction. And I feel like it was a bit of a distraction, and it's a big night and it's a big time. And particularly for us, like with all the awards we won, which I'll talk about in a second, I think can be a distraction. So I think that needs to go a change. What went wrong? I think the ref choice in the competition for the best ref for the grand final went wrong, and he stuffed up the game styles. And Penrith adapted a little bit better and was able to manage that better. So I think that went wrong. But then I just think we lost our attacking way, and we lost where we went with our attack, and we disappeared in attack. Munster and Hughes didn't have their now. We only scored 6 points. So I think we lost our way. But I think but let's put it to the other side, is what went wrong was that Penrith went just freaking good, and it was in that moment on that time to shine. They shone really well. I think one thing that I want to talk quickly was that we were the second most inexperienced team in the finals. Like we're young, these grand finals, you've got to lose to win. I've said that for a long time in all things. You got to lose to win, and I think we had to lose that. I wanted to win. I thought we were the team to win, but we got to lose to win, and that was a moment there. And that inexperience really shone when the time came to crunch, and it was hard, and Penrith stood up.
Yeah, no, I probably agree with everything you're saying there. So, again, that juggernaut of the Penrith Panthers came through and have been there, done that again. And that experience factor was the huge key point, in my opinion. Let's finish up with, as everyone knows by now, a couple of these questions that we ask. The key moment of the year, Trav, what was your key moment?
I've got two. So I've got a team one and I've got a player one. My key moment was the grand final loss. I think that's an easy one. That's boring. Sorry, listeners. But yeah, the key moment for the year was the grand final loss. On a player wise, the key moment of the year was Howarth being picked at centre. I just think he just completely shore up 13 spots. It was amazing what a dude could do in the centre spot and what he was able to do, attack and defense. So key moment there was just putting him in the centre. I think the Bellamy masterclass of putting him at centre was a massive moment for the year and really freed us up.
I was going to do the grand final loss. That was an obvious one in my opinion, but I went a bit different. I went the Cameron Munster injury, because then it elevated Wishart, and we'd basically seen a star was born in a way, and just how good he played. It sort of added a few extra question marks that necessarily didn't need to be placed for the Storm moving forward, but we also just got to experience them, and it elevated Hughes as well. That's the thing. It's sort of, there was a few little additives to that sort of storyline that we got to see from the Cameron Munster injury, and I thought it was a key moment of the year to elevate, as I said, Wishart and then Hughes as well in the long run for that. Surprise packet of the year. Trav sort of stole this already, but I'll mention Jack Howarth for mine was the surprise packet, because, as I said, we've heard about him for a number of years now, and it just felt like, in a way, maybe that fire's gone out and they're just going to run him out of his contract and he'll be sort of one of those players that was a myth in a way. And we got to finally see him, experience him out of position originally, but he's quickly made sure that position is his position moving forward. And it was a great, great year to watch Jack Howarth come of age, and so keen to see what he's got moving forward. What was your who was your surprise packet of the year, Trav?
Look, I've got a few. So sorry. Blore and Kantoa were big this year. Like Katoa just took his game to a whole nother level and was just enormous. Blore coming through this year has just shown what he's got, and I'm really excited to see. You took the Howarth choice there. I picked Howarth. I've got a circle around Warbrick in terms of how good he was this year. I want to talk about the surprise packet around what Bellamy was able to do this year as a masterclass, and I'm really surprised by what he did. We were the second best attack and the second best defense with such a youth movement, so many injuries and what we had to do, and that's really surprising. So surprise packet for me. But my number one surprise was the Harry Grant captaincy and how freaking good he was as a captain this year, and how he navigated that and what he had to do. So that was my surprise packet. I was a bit scared about it, of what was picking him as captain, and I was really keen to I thought Munster just had it in him to be the captain. I thought Hughes was probably an easy choice. I even thought Pappenhausen could have been a good captain. I was really surprised they took Harry Grant as the captain, but Jesus, I really enjoyed that. I reckon that's your future Queensland Origin takeover DCE captain choice. I even reckon what I saw here is the next Australian captain.
Good shouts there. You can't argue with that one. Who needs a big 2025?
All right. So the obvious choices there are Pappy and Munster. I think are really obvious, but so I'm going to steer clear of that. And this, I'm going to go as a whole collective. Our forward pack needs a really big 2025. I think the Stefano choice pickup is enormous, and geez, I'm excited to watch what he does, and I hope he comes in, buys into the system, does the preseason camp, does all those sorts of things that he has, and he really buys into that, and he lifts and takes our forward pack to a whole nother level, because they need to step up. We can't keep relying on Pappy, Hughes, Munster, Warbrick and Coates on the wings to, do some sick things that happen on the sides, on the wings. Our forward pack really needs to dig deep and get those meters and do the work that they do to allow the other boys to do what they do. I've got a big 25 in Nas, Stefano, and the rest of our pack. Love it.
For mine, sorry to say, I went one of the obvious ones. I went Cameron Munster. We've obviously seen he's come back. He came back from the injury this year, and as I said, did have some really good moments and didn't seem like he lost too much. But for mine, the pressure mounts because of how good the Melbourne Storm did play throughout the year when they were without him. We've seen some players now step up in his absence and show that they can do it. No doubt in my mind, having Munster there is a whole different kettle of fish, and you definitely want Munster there. But what I'm trying to say is that the Storm have now shown, and some of these players have shown, hey, I'm a little bit cheaper on your salary cap sort of thing, and I can do the job. I've shown you I can do the job. And it's a big year for Munster next year in terms of health-wise, to make sure he stays on the field, and just to make sure he continues to say, hey, I'm the big dog around here. I'm the big 5'8" in the competition. You guys just settle down there and bide your time. So who was your player of the year? I felt this one's an easy one.
Oh, man, I couldn't pick it. It was really hard. We had 13 stars. Jerome Hughes, easy.
Yeah.
He won Dally. He's the best player of the year. How do you? You can't say he's not the best player in your team, too.
It is 100% Jerome Hughes, and there could be a number of honourable mentions, as you just said, Trav, that the whole team played good, and you could also, there's a way you could sort of twist this and say it was Craig Bellamy was the player of the year in a way, because
it was Dally and coach of the year, man.
Good he evolved once again. But that's it for the Storm, guys. Hope you did enjoy this one. Again, it was great to have obviously Trav part of it, being the Melbourne Storm fan. But hope you enjoyed it. As always, hit that like button, all that sort of thing. Share it around. Make sure you're hitting that bell icon as well on Spotify. Follow on YouTube. Get all the notifications whenever we release new stuff. And we'll be back with you for another team season review.